Definitely one of the cooler startup chimes, and recorded by the Detroit Symphony Orchestra, interestingly enough. Tonight we're driving the 2020 Lincoln Aviator. This is a reserve all-wheel drive trim. Starts at $58,700. We have a few options, which brings the price of this test car to $75,000. So, full-on American luxury. Here we are. Lincoln's doing some good things with this Aviator. Tonight, let's take you on a little bit of a walk around, show you around this thing. We'll take it for a drive, give you some impressions behind the wheel, and then we'll wrap this video up by testing this wonderful Revel audio system in our sound test. So starting off, we have a very similar interior to the Lincoln Continental, which I actually drove a few weeks ago. But there are some changes, of course. I really like what they've done with the overall surfacing and the design of this interior. It takes a little bit of getting used to. The button layouts and especially some of the steering wheel controls. You'll notice that some of these controls, all the cruise control buttons, are blacked out or not illuminated until you engage the cruise control. Kind of a neat feature. Also, these menu buttons are always changing depending on where you are in the display here. It's a joystick only, so there are no real buttons on here except for these two buttons and the buttons behind the wheel. But you can kind of have quick access to certain menus or use this as like a home button, and it all shows up for you when you're in that setting. So it can be a little bit confusing at first, but once you kind of get the rhythm of it, it all shows you what's there. Overall, the quality of the interior materials is pretty good. There are some cheap plastics on the climate control knobs. These little covers for the cup holders and the phone holder do feel quite nice, and there's not a lot of gloss black here in the center area. There's some gloss black around the steering wheel and around here, but these are not really highly used areas. There are some cheaper feeling materials, especially in the back where the wiper controls are. But overall, it's a pretty nice feeling vehicle. This touchscreen is beautifully high resolution. Apple CarPlay is massive, probably the most high-res Apple CarPlay I've seen. And Ford's Sync 3 is quite nice as well. You have a lot of settings in here that you can configure and adjust to your preferences. There are even personal profiles that you can save. Massaging seats, all the good stuff. The only thing I do wish there was a button for would be the turn off, stop, start. At least it is a responsive, quick system, but whatever you set it to, it'll automatically reset the next time you open the car. And I like how when you press Maps, it takes you to Apple CarPlay. That's pretty cool. You have a decent size center console here, and kind of a neat place to charge your phone with wireless charging right there. Your USB port to connect to Apple CarPlay, and there's also USB-C in there, is right here. And of course, like all Lincolns these days, you have this button transmission selector. Takes a little bit of getting used to. Really nice high-resolution reverse cameras. You can even zoom in and zoom out on details. And of course, buttons and knobs for all of your climate control, which is fantastic. Heated and cooled seats, and I will say these are some of the quietest cooled seats I've ever tested. So a well done Lincoln. You have 3 different auto fan settings that you can set to. Heated steering wheel, all the good stuff that you would want in your $60,000, $70,000 luxury car. These seats are very interesting too. Lots of adjustability in here, and this kind of funky looking backrest situation that can be moved up or down or forward or back, and there's a lot that can be done, which is very exciting. You can even independently adjust these leg bolsters here, which is fun. Alright, otherwise, pretty standard stuff that you would expect. We have a massive panoramic sunroof, and of course the back seats. And this Aviator is equipped with captain's chairs. You can also get the bench row in the back too, but this brings it to be a little bit more of a luxury experience. A push button to open the door. You do have a physical handle down here if you ever need it. Notice how the door frame extends all the way to the bottom of the skirt, which is interesting. So looking at the exterior of this is probably my favorite part of the design here. This is a really stunning logo. I love what Lincoln has done here. It's a beautiful shape, it's a beautiful side profile, and on these 22-inch wheels, this thing looks really good. I wish there was just a little bit more tire sidewall, but that said, they do look sharp, and on this air suspension, the Aviator rides really quite well. Some neat looking headlights, a little bit of illumination here in the Lincoln logo. I think this is a very attractive SUV. I mean, look at it, it's pretty good. This is based on the Explorer. It looks sleeker, it looks slimmer, and way more luxurious, and that translates directly to the driving experience and how this thing is behind the wheel. But we'll get there in a little bit. Let's pop the trunk, show you guys what the storage space is like. Tons of room in this Aviator. If you fold the captain's chairs down, you have just an enormous amount of space back here. A little bit of room underneath here to put things, store stuff. The third row you can fold up electronically, but there are only buttons right here. There are no third row buttons in the rear seat area, so you have to open the trunk to pop that up. We'll see how comfortable this is in a minute. Two buttons here to lock and lower the tailgate. I do like this line across the back. Just an attractive looking, simple design. One thing you'll notice too, the exhaust tips don't quite come out of the exhaust. They go below so as to keep the tip surface looking clean. Of course, all the door handles are buttons on the inside, which has kind of a neat feel to it. Get a nice window shade here. And the back seats, I will say, are very comfortable. You can even control the panoramic sunroof from a couple buttons here. Same type of center console. This feels very luxurious. You even get a little display here where you can control your audio, your climate, your seat temperatures, heated or cooled seats in the back. Little mini versions of the vents up front. And of course you get plug outlet and USB charging ports. Plenty of space, lots of room to put your feet under the front seats, and I don't know, this is just kind of a neat look. There is a little bit of an airplane vibe in this cabin, especially when looking ahead at the front seats from the back, second row. To fold this seat forward, just push up a button. Looks like there's a decent amount of room in the back here, about the same as what you would expect. Seats are pretty easy to pull back and use from the third row. And if you just need to get out, just push that button. I will say though, moving these seats around by hand is a little bit cumbersome. They are pretty heavy and a little bit unwieldy to move around, so you have to put some muscle into it. Let's take a look under the hood. We have a 3-liter twin-turbo V6, makes 400 horsepower. Pretty ample power for this all-wheel drive SUV. There's also a plug-in hybrid powertrain, which I would be curious to drive and test out in comparison to this. It's a really smooth torquey unit. It's mated to a 10-speed automatic. Alright, I think that pretty much covers a lot of the important walk-around stuff. There's also some more storage underneath here. Let's take this thing for a drive and see how it does on the road. This is definitely one of the smoother vehicles I've driven from the domestic market lately. And this Aviator does a very good job of doing the luxury driving experience. It's relaxing, it's calming, all of your shifts are smooth and seamless. The steering is feather light, and the air suspension in this Aviator rides super well. There's even a feature here where it will predict the road ahead of you with a camera and adjust the suspension tuning accordingly to kind of brace for the bumps or soak up the bumps as needed. This definitely still drives and feels like a mid-size SUV, though the ride quality is definitely a big highlight here. It's fantastic. The ride in this is awesome. This is a pretty bumpy road that we're driving on right now. And really the only thing you can tell are there are quite a few rattles throughout the cabin. Get some rattling from the rear seats, certain panels here and there. Rattles will come and go. So just something to kind of keep in mind. If that type of thing really bothers you in your luxury vehicle, then you may want to look at the Germans or the Japanese counterparts. We have a number of different drive modes. So when you start off, it'll put you into normal drive mode every time. You have a conserve eco mode, an excite, kind of more dynamic mode, and of course there are also drive settings for slippery conditions and deep conditions where it'll also raise the air suspension and turn off traction control. Let's throw it into excite and see how it does around some of these corners. We also have paddle shifters. They're not the most responsive in the business, but they do the job. You can definitely feel the suspension stiffen up a little bit. I've got some more weight in the steering here, and overall the composure around this corner is pretty good. Put us into the conserve mode. Honestly, that's kind of my favorite driving mode. The throttle has a really nice linearity to it, and it just smooths out the driving experience in this car. You don't buy a Lincoln Aviator to hustle it around corners. You buy it to be relaxed and comfortable, and for the most part, this does a pretty good job at that. On the highway, there's very little wind and road noise. These 22-inch wheels are a little bit rough and noisy over some larger potholes and expansion joints, but 99.9% of the time it's great, it rides awesome, and you're very, very, very comfortable, and you feel very isolated in this cabin. Honestly, I think the trade-off is worth it for looks versus performance on these 22s. You just definitely don't want to hit any potholes in them. We'll get into radar, get into cruise control. Just a quick overview. Like I said earlier, all the buttons appear when you engage the system. You can skip 5-mile-an-hour increments down here. Lane centering seems to work quite well. It's an easy on and off with the press of a button. And you can choose your distance with a button down there too. Very often I will have my hands on the wheel and it'll prompt me to put my hands on the wheel. You just need to give it a little bit of a squeeze or put some pressure on the steering. But overall, it's a very nice radar guided system, and the lane keep assist does a pretty nice job as well. You can hear stop start engaging there. I do wish a lot of these stop start systems would rely on pedal pressure to engage. One of the more irritating things about this car is that it will turn off when I put it into park, and then when I let off the brake to turn the engine off, the engine will turn on and then turn off again, and it just kind of makes it feel kind of cheap in the design of the system. This 3-liter V6 sounds pretty good. Makes some decent little throaty noises. And at low speeds, I love the lightness and the weight of the steering. You know, I don't think this is a class-leading luxury vehicle, but it's a very good entry into the market from Lincoln. And I think it's establishing them as a serious contender in the luxury market yet again. So I'm very glad that this car is as good as it is. It's kind of a surprise. And the more time I've spent with it, the more I have enjoyed driving it. And that is a mark of a good vehicle. There are some little unrefinements here and there. The rattles throughout the cabin. Sometimes the acceleration and the throttle tuning could be a little bit smoother and more consistent. 10 speeds is a lot. That's a lot of gears, and sometimes there is a little bit of hunting going on and inconsistency between shifts. But for the most part, it is all very smooth and pretty much works in the background. You definitely get the feeling that you're in a luxury vehicle between the air suspension and the way it rides, to just the isolation in the cabin. I like that this is a rear-wheel drive based platform too. Just cruising here on the highway, we can see our fuel economy this week, and we're right on the money for the EPA average. Highway MPG is rated for 24, and city MPG is rated for 17. So not the best fuel economy, but considering the size of this thing and the fact that it's all-wheel drive, it's got a twin-turbo V6, that seems about right. We get a little bit of ambient lighting, which is probably kind of hard to see right now, but it's very subtle on the door sills there and in the center area underneath the console. I'd say power in this is adequate. It's not super fast. It's not as fast as you would think 400 twin turbo horsepower would be, but it's definitely good enough to get you up to speed and do all the necessary passing that you need to. The plug-in hybrid powertrain does add a little bit more power to that mix. One strange thing about the steering wheel that a lot of other reviews have mentioned is the placement of this voice control button. And it's interesting that they've put it here because it's not really I don't think it's a very often used feature in most modern cars, just because these voice control systems aren't the best. And it's in a very high use area. But, you know, if you use a lot, great. If not, though, it hasn't really gotten in the way, and that's a surprise. I thought I would have accidentally have pressed it hundreds of times already, but I haven't pressed it once. And it's because it has this little surround on it, and that kind of protects it from being accidentally pushed, which is nice. Alright guys, well that's going to wrap up our thoughts on the Lincoln Aviator. Let's go into an audio test portion of this review, and we'll see what this Revel sound system does. If my experience is anything like the Lincoln Continental, this is definitely one of the nicer audio systems on the market. Let's go in here to Apple CarPlay and select our playlist. Once you get used to it, these joysticks are actually very nice to use on the steering wheel. There's no vagueness in what direction you're pushing them. Positive experience.
With me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 stick, you can get high with me, that's a deal, right? Ride with me if you ride with me, you can slide with me if you feel like 550 on the 5 stick, you can get high with me, that's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? That's a bet, right? That's a deal, right? That's a deal, right? Hey, coming down like precipitation. I ain't never met a limitation. Hate applying my elimination. Gotta go to Google for the information.
Hopefully that gives you a pretty good idea of the sound system in this. It rocks. It's awesome. It's fantastic. No complaints, really. Otherwise, guys, this is a pretty good overall package. I think, you know, American luxury companies kind of just do things to like the 95th percentile. If there were just some little quality items that were ironed out, this would be a really nice contender. But for the most part, it's a great package. It's a very nice effort from Lincoln, and I'm glad to see that this is as good as it is. So that kind of sums up the Aviator for me. they've done some good things here. There are some things that they can definitely improve upon, but for now, alright guys, let me know if you have any questions in the comments, and as always, feel free to check out Winding Road Magazine and Daily Motor for more videos on this Lincoln Aviator. We'll be posting a day drive, a night drive on this on Winding Road. If you want to see more behind the scenes stuff of what I'm up to on a daily basis, check out TheTopher2 on Instagram. Throw a link to that in the description as well of this video. Alright guys, that's the Lincoln Aviator. It's been nice driving this week, and we'll also be able to post a Lincoln Continental video here shortly in the next few days, and it'll be good to get some of the Lincoln lineup covered after all this time.